What happens when the best athletes in the world lose? The Secret to Victory is a podcast from Gatorade and Gimlet Creative about how the best athletes in the world use defeat to fuel a win. Episodes feature Serena Williams, Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, Matt Ryan, JJ Watt, Karl Anthony Towns, Kyle Schwarber, and the people who know them best. We recommend you check out their final episode, where host and former Atlanta Falcons player Dominique Foxworth talks to Matt Ryan about the Falcons' Super Bowl loss and how he prepared for the current season. Visit Gatorade.com/podcast to listen now or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Want an easy way to see if you could save money on car insurance? Geico gives you 3. Call 1-800-947-AUTO. Go online to geico.com or stop by the Geico office nearest you. 3 ways you could save 15% or more.
This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. Subscribe now by going to the Listen tab in the ESPN app.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
Good morning. Here we are. We're back and better than ever. Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. A happy Monday to one and all. We've got everything in the world going on. Get a load of this. We've got thrilling football finishes. We have 4 baseball games today. We have a lineman looking to fight fans. We have a coach videotaping the last thing in the world he wants you to see.
Oh, boy.
And we have the vice president taking it up a notch in the debate over the national anthem. Holy smoke, Golic, what a day.
What a day is right. Thank God there was some great stuff on the field that we can actually talk about, because God knows we're going to have to talk about some of that off the field stuff. But on the field, we were treated, whether it was in baseball or football, to some wonderful highlights from some guys that you don't know to guys that will go down as possibly the greatest of all time at their positions.
And some significant losses yesterday as well. It was a brutal NFL injury day. We're going to start with off the top here and buckle your seatbelt because it's going to take a while because there's so much going on. Here we go. We'll start with the baseball. Greg Bird homered in the 7th inning for the Yankees yesterday, and that was all the offense that they needed in a 1-0 win to keep their season alive.
Second player in baseball postseason history to homer in a 1-0 win when facing elimination. The other was Jorge Posada, oddly enough. Also a Yankee. Also did it when the team was trailing 2-0 in the ALDS in 0-1 against the A's. Yankees won that series. They're not going to win this series. Sorry to say that. But
Golic still believes in his Indians.
Let me tell you what a great pitching duel we finally got. You know, we got Tanaka goes 7 innings. Carrasco went into the 6th inning, neither one giving up a run. It was really, really good to see, I thought. You know.
It's been an unbelievable series. I mean, obviously the Friday night game had so much drama. You almost could, it feels like it was 2 years ago now. Right. But, I mean, between everything from the decision not to replay the play and everything else. But one way or another, they leave themselves in a 2-1 situation. Yankees clinging to some life. And I'm sure a lot of Yankee fans who were booing Joe Girardi yesterday are thinking to themselves, we could have been in position to try and win this series. We'll see. Meanwhile, the Red Sox-Astros series has been the least competitive in the history of Major League Baseball by one standard of measure.
Yeah, it really has. It's been ugly. This is the first series in baseball postseason history in which each of the first 3 games was decided by 5 or more runs. And let's give it up to a guy that has to, party at Chuck E. Cheese. Rafael Devers was 2 for 3 with a monster shot home run, 3 RBIs, youngest player with postseason home run in Red Sox history, 20 years, 349 days. So he doesn't have to wait long to finally have that first beer or first drink of his life, right? He doesn't have to wait long, but man, second youngest player in AL history of the postseason home run. Manny Machado was just over 20 years old in 2012 in the ALDS in Game 3.
So both American League teams that were down 2-0 stay alive, which, as I mentioned, leads to 4 games on the baseball postseason schedule today. Should be a lot of fun. Okay, to the football. In a battle of 0-4 teams, the Chargers beat the Giants. So the Giants are 0-5. But, Mike, right now, as crazy as it sounds, that almost feels like the least of their problems.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, they're done. I mean, Odell Beckham Jr. goes down, and now a lot of people talked about this guy sometimes with his injuries. Does he embellish him a little bit? I mean.
The second you saw that.
But this one, you knew it. The way his ankle got folded, he had a broken ankle. There was no doubt about that one. He is going to be done for the year already. They were. How quickly did we hear after the game? He was going into surgery. But let's just add to the woes there. Sterling Shepard and Brandon Marshall both leaving the same series with ankle injuries, and then a backup wide receiver in Dwayne Harris breaks his foot.
He's out for the year.
I mean, it's ridiculous what's going on with that receiving core, and they don't run the ball well at all, and they're 0-5. So maybe they were, of the Jets and the Giants, maybe it was the wrong New York team we were talking about that could get the first pick this year.
It's a total disaster, obviously, in every way that it could be for the Giants, but we will spend some time talking about Odell because there are a million different repercussions of that injury for him. And speaking of superstars getting injured, if you didn't stay up late last night, you missed a very impressive Kansas City win over Houston. Don't let the final score fool you. The Chiefs won that game big, even though the final score might not indicate it. But Houston loses JJ Watt, Mike. He will be gone for the rest of the season.
The tibial plateau fracture. We'll explain more in a bit on that one. Bottom line is, he is done. You could see the pain that he was in trying to lead the field and put pressure on it, which is exactly, as we'll explain, this injury is the whole deal, is you can't put pressure on it. But this guy from 2011 to 2015 trailed only my former teammate and the greatest defensive lineman I've ever seen, Reggie White, in sacks in that 5-season span. Reggie had 81 and Watt had 74.5. But since then, he's had surgery for a torn groin muscle, a couple of back surgeries, and now this as well. He's played only 3 games last year, didn't have a sack this year, now will miss the rest of the season. So you wonder, for a guy who was in his, 7th year, and what he had done already, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, on pace for an incredible Hall of Fame career. And I heard my son bring it up this morning. Is he still, if he's done doing what he's doing, has he played enough to go into the Hall of Fame? We've seen the guys like Terrell Davis, Gale Sayers, who didn't play a long time and still get into the Hall of Fame. But what a shame for what this guy does. And then you add to that Whitney Merciless, who is a fantastic rusher as well. He is out. He tore a pectoral muscle for a team that is scoring a lot of points in what Deshaun Watson is doing, and they had the number 1 defense last year. These 2 guys are out. These 2 guys have basically, 109 sacks between them since they started playing together in 2012, more than any other teammates out there in that time span. Now both are gone. That really hurts this defense.
Absolutely, and we're being cautioned not to say that Watt is officially out for the season. There are people like Des Bryant, for example, had a similar injury and came back in just 3 weeks. Almost everything I had seen immediately afterwards suggested that he is going to miss the rest of the season. So we'll obviously wait and see. They've not made an official determination
I will
on that yet.
cautiously say he's out for the season. How about that?
I mean, I turn to you for these things.
Listen, now, I will, if you look up tibial plateau fracture, there are 6 categories of it.
Okay.
So I guess it is smart to wait and see just where we are on that one from 1 to 6 on just how bad it'll be.
There isn't any benefit in rushing into it. They'll let us
exactly
know,
right. Yeah.
Obviously, when they have some sense of the severity. Either way, it's a terrible injury.
Yes, it is.
For the Texans, and so 2 superstars amongst the many players who got injured yesterday. And then, as I mentioned, the Chiefs remain the only unbeaten team in the NFL with another really impressive performance against the Texans. The final score is 42-34.
Oh, they were hammering them.
But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it wasn't even close. Chiefs have won 9 straight road games. I mean, really been impressive what they've done. And I heard them talking before the game, and it was interesting that the 2 first-round picks have had an incredible effect on both these teams. Deshaun Watson, obviously. Watson threw 5 touchdowns. Now, a couple in garbage time when Kansas City was rolling them. But I still think he's throwing pretty well. His completion percentage was not good, 16-31. But then I was, because when they said that, both first-round picks, I thought, wait a minute, Patrick Mahomes was the other one. They said, and Mahomes, the threat of Alex Smith being ousted again, kind of like he was with Colin Kaepernick in San Francisco, is pushing Alex Smith. He's having the best year of his career. In his 13th season. This guy is absolute money right now, and this team is absolute money right now.
He's throwing the ball down the field. Wouldn't it be remarkable if when we get towards the end of the season, the 2 leading MVP candidates, and it's very early for this, but it's not inconceivable, could be Alex Smith and Aaron Rodgers, who were the 2 quarterbacks who came out the same year. Some people liked Rodgers better, including you. Alex Smith winds up going number 1. Rodgers falls all the way down to Green Bay, and the rest is history. Be something else if Alex Smith, 13 years later, winds up winning an MVP award. Right now, he would be a leading candidate for that award. And then finally, Monday Night Football tonight, and it should be an interesting one. The Vikings and the Bears. The Vikings are expecting to have Sam Bradford back playing quarterback, but that's not the quarterback everyone will have their eye on.
No, everyone's going to be looking at Mitchell Trubisky making his first career start. No first-round quarterback has made his first career start on Monday Night Football since Aaron Rodgers in 2008, and no rookie quarterback has done it since Sean King in 1999. So it's Trubisky time in Chicago tonight.
Off the top.
And that is an elongated but well worth every minute of it version of Off the Top, brought to you by Upside. Now save big on travel. Get a big gift card with every trip you buy. You will love Upside.com. That's Upside.com.
It's just too easy to pull out every old school reference and go Mitchapalooza. I mean, it's just too easy to do, right?
And it's a great day in Chicago. Great sports day. I remember when they first saw the way the National League Series lined up, that there was some concern that the Cubs and Bears would be playing at the same time, but the Cub game goes in the afternoon. So the Cubs at Wrigley Field in the afternoon, the Bears at Soldier Field at night. Crazy day in Chicago. But that's not where we begin. We will begin with the game of the day yesterday, and that was Dallas and Green Bay. And these two teams have now played back-to-back thrillers in that same building. The playoff game last year where Aaron Rodgers leads them from all the way back to win, and then last night or yesterday late in the afternoon where he does the same thing again with a late touchdown pass to Devontae Adams that was a thing of beauty.
I mean, that game held so much. You saw the way the Cowboys went down in their first drive, got aided by just, as I tweeted out yesterday, the worst unnecessary roughness call I've ever seen in my life, which actually gave the Cowboys that first touchdown or helped them get it instead of they would have had to kick a field goal, was it not for just the worst call, which we can get into and what they may need to do to kind of change this rule or whatever. It's turning in all honesty, it's turning into soccer a little bit. With the way it went on. Des Bryant ran a route in the end zone. I'll just say it right now. And Blake Martinez got called for unnecessary roughness. And I mean, grazed Des Bryant. Never hit him in the helmet. Never hit him with his head. It was the worst. But what happened is Des laid on the ground for a second. Now I feel like we're playing soccer here. When all of a sudden the guy lays down, acts like he's hurt until the yellow card comes out, and then he gets up and runs back and starts playing again, which is what Des did. Des laid there and acted like he was hurt a bit. The ref signals incomplete pass and then throws the flag.
Yep.
It was one of the worst, most embarrassing calls I've ever seen in my life. It was horrific. And that was on third down. The Cowboys would have had to kick a field goal, but they got a first down and they scored a touchdown.
I will admit, watching it live action, I thought the same thing the ref did.
Yep.
And then it was not until the end they called the flag and all this. And then and by the way, I had Jason Witten yesterday.
Yeah.
So I was happy.
Were they throwing to him early enough?
Here's another chance now to get a new set of downs. But whatever, that's not the point. The point is, I thought I saw the same thing the ref thought he saw. And then when you saw the replay, you realize, okay, it's a terrible call.
And here's what I don't want to do, but I mean, you can't tell me it doesn't cost you.
Of course
okay?
Of course.
It costs you. Do we get to the point where when they're going to call a play like that, they have to review it? And then you can waive off the penalty. God knows I don't want any more reviews of everything. But when it's that blatant, there was even a call against the Cowboys later in that game. It was a little more of the head going down, but the rule says forcible contact. There was no forcible contact, and there was a flag against the Cowboys. If you're going to call them, and they can be so detrimental to a defense that you think you almost have to start reviewing those calls and wiping them out. I mean, you could have reviewed that one for 2 seconds, said, all right, we blew that one. Because I'm with you. The refs are taught to throw it, err on the side of caution.
Right.
And they're seeing it at full speed. So I'm not going to lay this all on the refs, even though it was standing right there. But it is full speed. But, man, that was a horrific call. That said, what a game. What a game. I almost thought to myself at the end, after Dallas throws that pass on second down on their last drive, going, oh, my God, what are you doing stopping the clock here? There was part of me, we have seen Barry Bonds get walked with the bases loaded.
Right.
Mm-hmm. There was part of me and what was one of the best read option, keep the ball in the belly of the running backs plays you've seen by Dak Prescott, could have walked in the end zone. I swear to you, he was running the end zone. I was sitting in my chair. I'm saying, take a knee at the one.
Right.
Take a knee at the one. Which makes zero sense. Zero sense to do.
Except you can't give the ball back to that guy.
There's a minute and 13 seconds to go, and they got one timeout. And all they need, is a field goal to tie, right?
Correct. Which also, I think, also plays into the way the last drive plays out also, because I think that Dallas did not expect Rodgers to throw the ball in the end zone in a sort of dangerous rush that he did, because you've got the field goal in your back pocket.
And before we get to that drive, but that's what I thought. And I thought, you can't do that. You got an easy touchdown. You got to take it, and you got to have your defense stand up and do something here.
Yep.
But that literally crossed my mind, and I said, it makes no sense to do, yet you walk Barry Bonds with the bases loaded. And it makes no sense to do, yet it makes perfect sense. Because you're at the 1 yard line, you got to figure you're going to get in at that point. And how much more time you can burn, or does the Packers have to use, obviously, the timeouts that they have left in this one. But they don't. They score, and I know conventional wisdom says just score it and let your defense do what they got to do. But then Aaron Rodgers, the big key with Eric, quite honestly, was obviously his passing. But then when he ran the ball for the first down, that saved him, because they don't make it there, they're going to have to kick the field goal, tie, and go into overtime. But Aaron Rodgers, I mean, who, if you were a Dallas fan, was not ungodly nervous? You cheered how quickly did you cheer when Dak Prescott went in the end zone, and how quickly did your head spin to the clock and go, I wonder if there's too much time on the clock?
Well, I'm going to tie it back to a conversation we had, I want to say it was 2 weeks ago, whenever it was that Houston played New England, and we had a similar conversation. The rules change a little bit for these guys. If it's Tom Brady, you don't give him a chance to beat you. If it's Aaron Rodgers, now again, I'm not going to criticize Dak for not taking a knee on the 1 yard line. I get it.
Yeah, I know.
But
I know it does seem crazy.
It is something you almost have to think about. Now again, if they wind up never scoring in that situation, well, now you've blown the game.
I get it. You're not scoring, maybe a fumble. I get it.
You're going to do it.
Yeah.
But I understand your point. You almost have to change the rules with these guys.
Right.
And we had Ryan Clark watching all of this, and afterwards saying the following about Aaron Rodgers, maybe the greatest of all time.
He's the best quarterback ever. Because, if we did, so if we were just putting things we want, characteristics we want in a quarterback, physical traits, right? If he was like, hey, long ball, of all time, you'd rank him in the top 5. Accuracy of all time, you'd rank him in the top 5. Throwing the ball on the run, you'd rank him in the top 5. So as we would go down these quarterbacks and rank their physical attributes, there would be no quarterback that finished with a higher total ranking than Aaron Rodgers. We were just talking about what they can do with the football in their hands on the field.
Tom Brady is going to go down as the most accomplished quarterback of all time, without question. And in a lot of people's mind, the greatest quarterback of all time. But I completely understand and agree with Ryan Clark. When you start talking about the way he can throw, on the move, what he can do, running when he has to, accuracy, throwing on the run, he has all those things on Tom Brady, right? Because Tom Brady doesn't do that. Tom Brady doesn't run. Tom Brady doesn't throw a lot on the run. He just doesn't have to. So do you want to hold that against him? Whatever. But Aaron Rodgers does all that. So overall, you could see, it's just like we talk about with LeBron James and Michael Jordan. Many think LeBron James is a better athlete, can do more physically gifted, and may not be a greater player than Michael Jordan, but the physical gifts that he have, that might be the same argument with Aaron Rodgers, even though some may at the end of this say Aaron Rodgers is a better quarterback, not more accomplished, but the quarterback. When you do that question, you got one guy to play quarterback for you, and you can take Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers. Who do you take? That'll be a question down the line, and you can't lose with either one of them. But that'll be a question.
It's going to sound like a ridiculous statement, but I do believe you could accurately say Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time, and Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback of all time. Yeah. And I think you might be right on both counts. And either way, he's certainly ridiculously good and wins a thrilling game yesterday. And listen to these numbers and what the Packers and Rodgers are doing in the fourth quarters this season. The Packers' scoring differential in the first 3 quarters of games is -1. They've been outscored by 1 point in the first 3 quarters. In the fourth quarters, their scoring differential is plus 112. Plus 112. They're obliterating people in the fourth quarters, and yesterday they get a huge win that we may remember towards the end of the season on the road at Dallas. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance with our compare rates for you, so you get the best deal even if it's not with Progressive, saving you time and money. Now that's Progressive. Call or click today. There may be no more exciting player in the NFL than Aaron Rodgers. If there is one, maybe it's Odell Beckham Jr. Yesterday he goes down, and it's going to be a while before he gets up again. And that's one of those where the second you saw the first replay, you knew he was done for the year.
Yeah, you knew
that's a terrible-looking injury.
And you saw him laying there. Remember, we saw him laying on the ground last week, kind of in a lot of pain on his ankle, and 2 plays later he was back in the game, right? So you were like, okay, But you saw this one. You saw him go down, and then until you saw the replay and you saw that ankle fold underneath, and you said, all right, that's busted ankle. Yeah, I mean, it was
that looked like one of those where the bone was going to come out.
I mean, it was ugly. It was just absolutely ugly, and he was obviously in a ton of pain. And as I said, how soon after the game with the tweets going out and the people saying he's rolling into surgery already. I mean, it was bad. And remember, this is a guy who was in that Aaron Donald situation, that Zach Martin situation, these situations where they were already guaranteed their next year's salary of $8 million, but you saw Aaron Donald holding out till the season started. He wanted to get that new deal. Zach Martin was working on a new deal, but once at some point they said no more, we'll wait till after the season. But then you cross your fingers for those guys, or they do and their families do, that nothing can cost you that big money. So now you have not only on a wide receiver a lower body injury this bad, that's going to require surgery to put that back together on what the future may hold and the potential for this big contract. In my eyes, he deserves the big money still, but the Giants have every thought, I'm sure, of, do we wait and see? We got to wait and see how he comes back from this
thing. Is this the sort of injury? It's not nerves. It's not right. It's the kind of thing. It's a bone. It heals. He comes back. He should be the same
It's
guy.
one of those things you put hardware in there. Does it heal up? Should be the same guy. That's the whole thought process, and that's what they're going through. I still think he's going to get his money. Again, he's guaranteed at least $8 million next year, depending on getting the deal done or not. But man, that was a horrible injury for a team. Let's just start looking at the team now. You really have to wonder where they're winning a game, because they were supposed to rely on their defense. Defense ain't doing a whole lot right now, and the offense can't do a whole lot right now.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike, back and better than ever. We are presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line, they will include Buster Olney. All around the baseball playoffs, he's covering Yankees, Indians. And he's got thoughts on all the series, and he'll join us in just a couple of minutes here as we have 4 games on the schedule today. And as always, you hear every pitch right here on ESPN Radio. Before we get to Buster, though, let me run you through sort of a quick series of headlines coming out of yesterday in the NFL. Obviously, it starts with the injuries. There were a ton of them. None of them may be more consequential than the one to Odell Beckham on a variety of levels. One, if the Giants season wasn't already over, it certainly is now at 0-5. But 2, his season is over, and the overall impact on his future, I think, is significant. You mentioned it, Mike, and Shefty has been very outspoken about this, interestingly, with all those guys from that class and that 5th year that gets tacked on for first-round draft picks, which winds up working against them. Yeah. Odell does not have a long-term deal, and he wants to have the biggest long-term deal in the sport. How do you think this affects his getting his new deal from the Giants?
Well, he was never going to get the biggest contract in the sport. He wasn't passing quarterbacks. I thought he was going to get the biggest wide receiving contract, and he still may. I mean,
but when? I mean, will this now mean that they wait? Do they wait and see him play next year? I think they wait and see how he recovers first. See, this is obviously a little out of my scope of how long you wait before you give a guy this kind of money. Do you need to see? Again, he's already under contract for next year, guaranteed, I think, $8.5 million. Is he a guy, though, if he's coming off an injury, does he want to step on the field, for only, and I'm doing air quotes now, $8.5 million when he is in a position to sign a deal that will guarantee him, I believe it'll probably be over $40 million of what his deal will be. If he has the highest wide receiving, you can get it quickly, Hembo, for it, but I think that's the area where he's going to be. The total value could be 60 or 70, but as far as guaranteed money, I think you're talking it's $49 million for DeAndre Hopkins right now. That's where he's at. Guaranteed. So he was in line to be over $50 million. Right in that ballpark.
Because that's where he would be. I still have, as long as the surgery goes well and it's something that's, hey, you put this screw in or this plate in and he's going to be fine. And I still think he'll be that guy and can be that guy and get that money. But Can you blame now the Giants for waiting? This is what football is. This is why guys hold out at times, but unfortunately, rarely do they hold out long enough to have a monster impact. You saw Aaron Donald went back. He didn't get a new deal. Aaron Donald held out. He wanted more money and didn't get a new deal, right? He didn't get that deal that he wanted, and he went back, and he's risking that every time he's out on the field. At the end of the day, the teams have the most leverage. They have deeper pockets, and you can start missing the possibility of missing game checks can obviously start to affect you when you have X amount of time on the field. But you see that big payday down the road, you're like, okay, I'm going to sit. Well, then how long are you going to sit? You're going to miss games? Now, he's supposed to make 1/8 this year, so, each game check, you're not making it. How long do you sit then? Do you sit past 8 games? Now that year doesn't count for you as far as toward free agency, or there's rules of that kind that our insiders could break down better than I can. But there are consequences for the longer that you hold out, and you're not getting any money. So at the end, very, very rarely have you seen players sit an entire season. They just can't afford to or don't want to. So in the end, the team can usually win this, and the player comes back to work. And now the team can say, oh, man, $50 million guaranteed on a ankle full of hardware? Don't know.
And a guy who, while brilliantly talented, unquestionably brilliantly talented, has created some headaches.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like there have been any, it's not like, and there's sort of a difference in the personalities of someone like Julio Jones and someone like Odell. And again, Odell could play for my team any day of the week.
Without question.
But it factors in a little somewhere. It already was going to factor in a little. Now, he was going to get the contract. But now I think it throws the future for him completely into flux.
And the team will know better than obviously any of us. If the surgery goes well, depending on the injury, if it looks like one of those that is going to heal up and he's making strides to heal up, I still think he gets his money.
I do too, and I hope that he does. I really do, because he's a tremendous player.
He absolutely is a fantastic player.
But this was the last thing in the world he needed to have happen. We're Mike and Mike. We'll get through all the rest of the NFL as we continue. But a reminder, the road to the World Series goes right through here on ESPN Radio. Every pitch of the action presented by AutoZone on ESPN Radio, ESPNRadio.com, and the ESPN app. And documenting all of it for us is our friend Robert Stanberry Olney III. We affectionately know him as Buster. He joins us this morning on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Good morning, Buster.
Good morning, guys. What's going on?
Well, I mean, everything in the world is going on, and you've got most of the information for us. So let's dive right into it. You're covering Yankees, Indians, and what an extraordinary collection of twists and turns that series has provided, from all the drama of Friday night to a very tight, brilliant pitching duel last night. Give us a sense of where you think they stand right now going to Game 4.
Well, the Indians, of course, with a 2-1 lead over the Yankees tonight. The Yankees have their ace, Luis Severino, against Trevor Bauer. The Indians is going to be pitching on short rest. On paper, you'd say the Yankees have an advantage, but I will tell you that I'm going to be fascinated to see how Luis Severino handles this, because, of course, you guys remember the other day in the American League wildcard game, he lasted only a third of an inning, and I've heard stories about how he had a tough time catching his breath while warming up for that game when he was in the bullpen. It was the first playoff game at any level he had ever pitched in his life. And so tonight he's going to get an opportunity to reset and to have another shot at being able to conquer that adrenaline. And I don't know, because there's going to be so much on the line. The last time he pitched, he got booed off the mound at Yankee Stadium, and he's certainly going to be someone over the last 3, 4, 5 days put a lot of pressure on himself. So the Yankees can climb back in, but Severino is going to have to conquur that in order for that to happen.
And certainly the expectation between him and that, and Bauer's going on short rest. You would know better than I his short rest numbers, but it certainly doesn't seem that we're getting both pitchers going at least 6 innings like we saw last night, or into the 6th for Carrasco and 7 innings for Tanaka.
I would say this, and last night was the first real great pitching performance that we've seen in this series. Trevor Bauer is a physical beast. When he walked into the interview room last night and talked to reporters when Francona announced that he was going to be pitching on short rest, he was like, this is normal rest for me. He throws all the time, and he's been pitching great. and he seems very comfortable with the idea of taking this on. He was phenomenal in that Game 1 start with his 20-mile-per-hour differential between the fastball at the top of the zone and a 95, 96 miles per hour and his curveball down at the bottom part of the zone, and I think he's going to throw really well. I think Severino is the big X factor.
Should Indian fans, including myself, be worried about Andrew Miller at all?
Yes. And I talked to evaluators after the game last night, and they said flatly he is not the same. What we saw out of him in October 2016 was arguably the greatest performance by any reliever ever. He had knee problems during the course of this season. The command is not the same. The sharpness of the breaking ball is not the same. And you saw last night Greg Bird generating the only run in that game off of Andrew Miller with a fastball. It's only the second time in the last 3 years that Miller had allowed a home run to a left-handed hitter on a fastball. And so while Terry Francona will continue to use him, he's not as dominant as he's been in the past.
Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Buster Olney is with us. The drama of Friday night, which was one of the craziest baseball games you'll ever see, left Joe Girardi in a terrible position. And look, there's no way to excuse the mistake that he made. You could argue about whether taking Sabathia out of the game when he did was the right thing or the wrong thing to do. In retrospect, it clearly looks like the wrong thing. You understand he goes into these things with a plan and he sticks with it, and it's worked largely for him through his managerial career. Not replaying the at-bat that winds up leading to the grand slam is the one that he's going to have a very tough time getting through, and we heard the crowd booing him like crazy last night. If the Yankees lose this series, if they lose tonight, do you think that Joe Girardi will not be back next year as their manager?
I don't think that he'll be back. Boy, did he wear that, the mistake of Friday night. And you mentioned he got booed. He's, of course, he was a former player with the Yankees, 10 years as a manager. It was easily the worst that I've ever seen him booed. And to his credit, he absorbed all that after the game. He said, hey, that's part of it. He prepared his family for that. But you just wonder how much he enjoys this job. If I were a friend of Girardi, I've known him for 20 years, and if we were friends, I'd say, would you rather be doing something else? He told reporters before the game last night that whatever happens, whatever decisions is made, he'll live with it. But the one thing we haven't heard out of Joe's mouth is, and of course his contract is set to expire at the end of this year, I want to be back. I want this job. I wonder about that, and if I had to guess, I think this is it for him.
So just to be clear, and I want to play what Girardi said after that, you just detailed much of it, but you can hear it from his own mouth in a moment. But I want to be clear, are you saying that you believe he will not be back and that will be his decision, or he will not be back and that will be a decision made for him?
I think there's as much chance that he walks away as there is that the Yankees would fire him.
Wow. Mike and Mike, Buster Olney. Let's hear it. Guys, you have it. Let's play Girardi from last night talking about getting booed.
I kind of expected it, I've seen him boo players and managers that have a lot more status than I do. I was prepared for it. I prepared my family for it. I told my kids what was going to happen. But it's life, and again, it's not going to change who I am. It's no fun to be booed.
Bottom line of it is this. He made an enormous mistake. He knows he made a huge mistake. It happens. Golic, can you give us a quick thumbnail on when you screw something up bad and you know it cost your team, and it's in a huge spot like this is, but over the course of your life, you have to have made mistakes in a sporting event.
Sure.
Like what do you do?
It's horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, what you try and do now, it's different how you manage out of it, but as a player, you try and make up for it. And then sometimes you can compound the problem because you're trying to make up for it so much. Baseball, is there sawdust coming off the bat? Are you trying too hard? In football, am I trying to do more than my responsibility to make a play to make up for it? You saw the tight end from the Houston or Tennessee Titans, Supernaw, I believe his name. 2 in a row. False starts, moving the team back, but then he catches the touchdown pass.
Right.
I mean, so you have a chance to make up for it a little bit, but that's what I'm trying to do. But from a manager standpoint, I don't know how, you can say, I made up for this.
I hate to see it because he's someone, as Buster said, that we know and we like and all of that. Look, he made a huge mistake.
They did.
There's no question.
Nobody's perfect. You make mistakes,
right.
But this was a monster mistake on a monster stage.
All right, Mike and Mike, Buster, let's stay in the American League here again. We got all 4 series continuing today, Buster. We have, we mentioned it off the top of the show this morning, the least competitive series in postseason history is Red Sox-Astros. It's the first time ever that the first 3 games of a series have all been decided by 5 runs or more. Where do we stand there?
Well, the Astros playing so well down the stretch, and the question's going to be, can the Red Sox continue to turn the momentum of this series, and knowing that Justin Verlander looms later? It's going to be a really difficult challenge, especially David Price has really served such a great role for the Red Sox coming out of the bullpen. He threw a lot of pitches yesterday. I would assume that he's probably not going to be available to pitch today. That's going to be a big weapon the Red Sox won't have. I think the Astros finish that off.
Going into the National League, let's start first with Bryce Harper. How much did he save today and save the season?
I don't think any team has more pressure on it in this postseason than the Nationals, who are in this 2-year window before Harper becomes a free agent. You know, they have so many incredible players between Harper and Strasburg and Scherzer, and yet they've never made it past the division series round. And so his 2-run homer with the Cubs leading 3-1 on Saturday to tie that game just seemed to give them all a breather, and Ryan Zimmerman hitting the home run to give them the win. It was something they badly needed. The Cubs, on the other hand, seem to be playing as loose and as free and within pressure-free as any team in the playoffs now.
So they're home for that Game 3 today. Cubs are, and again, what is a big day in Chicago is the Cubs are home in the afternoon and the Bears are home in the evening. And then finally, Diamondbacks-Dodgers, L.A. up 2-0 in that series. But Kershaw, the postseason struggles for Kershaw reared their head again in Game 1. So while they're in a good place, what place do you think he's in, and where do you think the Dodgers are as they look to get through this series?
Yeah, and in talking with evaluators about Kershaw, they're saying he's not the same. He doesn't look like the dominant Kershaw we've seen in the past, but I don't think it's going to matter. The Diamondbacks had to work so hard to win the National League wildcard game, and they used Robbie Ray, their left-hander, who's taken a big jump this year, in relief, and they brought him back on a couple days' rest to pitch in Game 2, and he didn't pitch very well. And so all those elements that you thought might work for the Diamondbacks against the Dodgers went away, and it's a big uphill climb for the Diamondbacks to get into this series.
All right, we'll see what happens. Again, all 4 games today on ESPN Radio. Coverage starts 12:30 Eastern Time. You can check your local listings. You can hear it all on the ESPN app, and obviously Buster will be there in the middle of all of it. Robert, thank you. Enjoy the games today.
Thanks, Buster.
See you guys. Always fun.
Buster Olney with us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. Buster also will not get a chance to watch his Vikings tonight.
No, he will not.
He'll be busy. Buster's a crazy Viking fan, but he'll be busy with all the baseball.
But I tell you what a place to be today is in Chicago. I mean, Listen, that was a place to be last year with the Cubs and what they did. But now in crossing over in the sports, you have the Cubs playing, at 3 o'clock Chicago time.
Right.
And then the game tonight to 7:30 your time, with the Bears. And the Bears, I know, aren't going anywhere this year, but it's the start of the Mitchell Trubisky era. So I think there's a lot of excitement there and anticipation of what that's going to be like. And obviously the Cubs, a few hours earlier, trying to take a lead in that series in Game 3. So listen, it's a great sports town as is, but to start off, hanging out, watching the Cubs, and then for those that are going to both, good luck to you and enjoy it. I mean, and if you're not, just enjoy whatever you can there, but it's going to be a great day in Chicago.
Unless the Cub game goes into extra innings, you should be able to easily do both. So we'll see. It should be that should be a fun day. And we'll see where that thing winds up. The Trubisky thing, you're right, that brings a whole lot of interest.
Oh, absolutely.
For the remainder of the season. It's fun for them on that front. All right, Mike and Mike, let me look through some of the Twitter reaction on a variety of different things here. Brandon, on the New York Giants, we mentioned how the Giants are done with Beckham and 0-5 and everything else. He tweets, the bright side is the Giants are tied for the lead in the Saquon Barkley sweepstakes, not that we have an offensive line to run behind. That would be very interesting to see. Now, there's some talk that maybe Sam Darnold doesn't come out. But if Darnold is available, and if Josh Allen is available, and if Josh Rosen is available, and if the kid from Oklahoma State whose name just jumped out of my head,
Mason
Rudolph, and whatever it is available, if the Giants wind up with the number 1 pick, which they're a very long way away from winding up with because Cleveland is 0-5 and San Francisco is 0-5. But if somehow the Giants wound up with that, do you think they would take Barkley? Would they trade the pick for the King's ransom that someone wants to go up and get one of these quarterbacks, although there are enough of them that it might not be the King's ransom you'd expect? Or if they really like one of these quarterbacks, with Eli Manning at, how old will Eli be next year? How old is he? 37? So, I mean, if you really like one of these quarterbacks, you need to consider taking him and looking to the future? And maybe you get the same kind of situation that his brother had in Indianapolis, where all of a sudden Andrew Luck is there. He turns 37 in January. That'd be a very interesting decision they'll have to make.
Well, a quarterback trumps everything. So if the Giants were to look at one of these quarterbacks and say, that's a guy, that is the future right there. Even if he has to sit for a couple of years, he is worth taking, then it wouldn't shock me to do it. But I'm sure there are going to be, obviously Giant players and fans that are saying, get us somebody now that can help. And that would be Saquon Barkley. Really quickly, by the way, your Northwestern Wildcats did a pretty nice job bottling him up.
Our defense played great.
The game
really
31-7. It wasn't, I don't think there was any.
It was 10-0 at halftime.
Yeah, exactly. But you held him 16 carries, 75 yards. I mean, he didn't have
basically all of it was on one play.
Exactly. So you did a pretty nice job there. But I see this guy. I mean, if the Giants somehow are the number one pick and didn't want to take a quarterback, boy, what a ransom they could get, because they'd want a running back anyway. They'd love to take Saquon Barkley.
So trade down, you mean like 3-4 spots? The last time a running back was the number one overall pick was 1995.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard all the time. I mean, how many times you hear Mel Kiper saying he wouldn't take one in the first round? That's certainly gone by the wayside. And back in the day, there were running backs taken normally from USC, who were taken number one in the draft. So this is a guy, and again, it all depends on need. I'll be interested where all these quarterbacks are by then. As we said, the quarterback, you over-evaluate at times, you magnify it at times, because you need a quarterback. So especially if all these guys make themselves, available, the Allens, the Rosens, the Darnolds, the Rudolph, the Baker Mayfield, if all these guys are in this draft, the evaluation process is going to be amazing. It's going to make my head want to explode because of all the evaluation that'll happen in shorts and a T-shirt, which will drive me nuts, which you're getting perfect evaluation right now when you see them on the field. But it is going to be amazing what could go on for teams that don't need that quarterback. But you're right about the Giants. It's an interesting situation with an aging quarterback. If they would have to rank one of those quarterbacks as almost the perfect 10. To say we're going to take him now because we think he's the future for us. They
drafted a quarterback in the third round last year, Davis Webb. Right. I don't know if they think he is the future or not. But, I mean, look at the teams that are 0-5. Do the Browns need a quarterback? Yesterday they benched DeShone Kizer at halftime. Kevin Hogan looked better. I mean, again, maybe the Jets weren't ready for his skill set or whatever it is, based upon preparation, but their offense looked much better in the second half with Hogan in there rather than Kizer. San Francisco clearly needs a quarterback.
Clearly going to go for a quarterback.
But they may go get Kirk Cousins. I mean, that's what everyone is expecting. We'll see how that thing plays out. And then you've got the Giants. And, I mean, the irony of it is it's exactly what happened to Peyton. It's Eli's older brother. He got hurt that one year. He's out. They draft Andrew Luck. He winds up on the Denver Colts. I heard David Letterman call them the other day. And Jeff Saturday is sitting here. He's getting set to come on. Did you see David Letterman?
Yes, I did.
He hosted.
You mean Santa Claus?
He looks like Santa Claus, yeah.
Smokes.
But did you actually hear his 5-minute speech at the Peyton statue unveiling? Oh, my God. It was so funny.
I just saw the picture of him sitting in between Bill Polian and Roger Goodell and thought, there's a picture.
Oh, let me tell you, Letterman was phenomenal.
Oh, I bet.
Jeff, how funny. Well, we'll get Jeff up here.
No, we'll get Jeff, because I have a question about Jeff and something he did during that ceremony that nerved me a little bit, and I thought could have worked out poorly for somebody.
Hey girl, have you done something new with your scales? Using new moisturizer? Nice. It really brings out the hazel in your eyes. Oh, hold on. Are you using whitening strips too? Your fangs look good, girl. Really good.
A really charming snake charmer? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
Wait, what? Have you been doing Pilates too?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
All right, we are Mike and Mike. Jeff Saturday has made his way into our studio. I want to read you a couple of quick things here. And obviously, first of all, Jeff, good morning.
Morning.
And what you guys did in Indianapolis yesterday was so much fun to watch, and we'll talk about it. But I did just see this. JJ Watt just tweeted, so it's worth pointing out. Again, he suffered the bad injury last night.
The tibial plateau fracture.
He just tweeted, I can't sugarcoat it. I am devastated. All I want to do is be out there on that field for my teammates and this city. I'm sorry. It's a terrible injury, and, of course, not only is he now going to miss the majority of a second consecutive season, but you also have everything he did this year after the hurricane and everything else. There was just all of this stuff. So I thought it was worth reading.
Well,
that
I mean, it's one of those things.
They
flash to the crowd. You had people that obviously don't know him that are crying.
Yeah.
For the guy, for what he has meant to that city. And I know players have poked their fun at him for some of the, the late workout videos and all that stuff. But listen, there's no denying when you can raise $37 million just by posting that you're trying to raise money, and what he's done for that city is just incredible. And this injury, as I said, there are 6 designations of a tibial plateau fracture, so I don't know where this one falls or how much time he's going to miss, but it's all about putting pressure on. You could see he could put no pressure on it. They lose, as I said, Whitney Merciless as well.
Yep.
These guys from 2012 on have had the most tandem sacks of anybody else, so this is devastating on the football field, but certainly in a city that he has helped a whole lot. There's
no doubt. Just the impact he's had on the community. You saw it, all the 99 jerseys. I mean, he embodies that franchise. I mean, he has far out, he has surpassed every player that's been on that football team in its history. And it's one of those things you knew when it happened.
Oh, yeah.
You saw on his face. I mean, you can tell players, you can tell their reaction, and he was devastated. Coming off, he's trying to brave through it, and he wants to walk off himself the best he can, and all of that. But just a devastating, and I agree, man. I mean, for a fan of the game, it's devastating to watch a guy like that go out this way, especially after what happened last year.
Yeah, we had a variety of terrible injuries yesterday, headlined by Watt and Odell Beckham. Meanwhile, we did have a wonderful scene yesterday and the whole weekend, really, where they unveiled the statue for Peyton Manning and then put him in the Ring of Honor yesterday. And you were there to snap the ball to him one last time. What was that whole experience like?
Oh, it was unbelievable. I'm not going to lie to you, the most nerve-wracking snap I've ever had in my career. I mean, you're thinking about it, Reggie. We're sitting in there, we're all talking in the locker room before, and Reggie, this is the most nervous I've ever been. I said, absolutely. Like, I've never felt this much pressure, because this is it, right? And he's like, hey, let's get this going. But I told him, he's like, hey, man, we're gonna get a snap. I said, listen, I'm firing that thing back there. You better be ready, because it's coming like normal.
I can't believe you did that. I'm telling you, I want to stop there for a moment because I'm watching this thing. You guys are in dress slacks and clothes. And I'm waiting for a little gentle snap, and a nice throw to the end zone. You rifled that thing. Now you're in jeans and a short sleeve dress shirt, and Peyton's in his slacks and a shirt and tie.
Look, Weezy's got gloves on.
He's got gloves on.
He put gloves on. He's like, I'm not going to drop it.
Unreal. But I'm thinking to myself, I couldn't believe that snap. I either thought you were going to be on your knees because you just snapped it into yourself, or you were going to break one of Peyton's fingers. I was stunned that you snapped it that hard.
That's exactly what I told him. I said, listen, don't let this be one where I snap it back and 2 of your fingers are facing the wrong way when you throw that thing out. But I told him, we only had to do this one way, man. And I actually got a text from one of my old coaches, Tony Marciano. He said, hey, footwork looked great. You got that second step in the ground right away. So I was being evaluated even on the snap.
Love it.
This far, it was awesome though. It was a great experience. We had so much fun. I mean, 2 days of just reminiscing, man, laughing it up, and really had a blast.
And they honored Peyton with a statue. And for those who haven't had a chance to see it, because it didn't get nearly enough attention.
Right.
David Letterman spoke at that. He's from Indy. He's a great fan of and friend of Peyton's as well.
Yes.
I just tweeted his speech because I don't feel like enough people have seen it. If you want to watch it, I just tweeted it. It was so funny, it's ridiculous. Jeff, you were sitting right behind him.
Oh, my word.
It was insanely funny.
Yeah, we get partnered. They were telling you before who partners, and they said, hey, Dave, you and Jeff Saturday are partnered up. He raised, hey, I want a new partner right away. He starts it out, and then we get to hang out right before we all go up on stage. And he goes up, and so when he's speaking, I have to sit directly behind him. And I have Mr. Irsay and Manning beside me, and he just starts from the jump. And I couldn't help but start. And, it's the uncomfortable laugh. It's not even, you know what I mean? And listen, as a true pro, he laid one out there about Peyton being a stone, in the pocket, not being able to move. But the crowd didn't get it, and he left it out there. I mean, he didn't move on. I mean, the silence, and I was
You're uncomfortable.
I was like, somebody say something, But to your point, it was a fantastic speech. I mean, and he's so good at capturing the moment. He took shots at Roger Goodell and then he was just no one was untouchable. He was coming after everybody, and it was a thing of beauty. And to your point, he and Peyton are good friends. Peyton was on his last show ever. And so it was nice to see him come back. Because he's like, I live in the woods. He's like, I got one place out in Montana somewhere or something where it takes you 7 days by wagon to get there.
All he needed was a robe and a staff, and he'd have been Moses. Holy smokes.
He's grown the beard out a little bit,
going.
but he's really funny.
Yeah,
you have to watch it. I know how much you love him.
Yeah.
It's 5 brilliantly funny minutes.
Yes.
At least that's what the video that I saw is only about 5 minutes long.
Absolutely.
It's brilliantly funny. Anyway, because we're on that game, we should also then comment on what happened at Indianapolis yesterday, which is that the Vice President of the United States came to the game. They were playing the 49ers, which is a team that everybody knows has more players that are going to take an action of some sort during the playing of the national anthem than any other team. They have done that basically throughout the entire season. So there was no mystery that this was going to happen.
Right.
And the vice president left, and immediately, I'm not telling you anything that everyone on the planet doesn't already know, and immediately released a series of tweets about how he was so offended by this that he couldn't stay there. And immediately the reaction was all over the place on a variety of different levels, up to and including many people talking about how incredibly expensive it is for that trip to be made.
Again, he went from Vegas to Indy, and then he had a dinner that night in California at 6:30. So Vegas to Indy for a few minutes, and then out to California.
Oh, wow.
All that was involved in it, from personnel and everything they had to do, was about $250,000 of, you'll hear everybody say, of taxpayer money for him to go there and basically, as they're saying, be Donald Trump's puppet, and have this as an act, against the NFL and how it was a slap in Peyton Manning's face. On the other side of that, I'll say there are many that think every time a player kneels, it's a slap in the face of the country and the flag. So, it all depends on your look on this, right? It all depends on your point of view.
How aware was everyone in the stadium of this when it was happening?
That's what I was going to say. Honestly, I had no idea. For whatever, Vice President Pence did, there was no one knew. While we were there at the stadium, going through all the, the halftime festivities leading up to it, no one knew. I had no idea until we were actually coming home, and Bill Pulley and I we're sitting there talking about it. I had no idea that it happened. I didn't know he was there. I heard Jim Irsay reference him when he went up about being there, so I just assumed he was still there. I didn't know that he had left right after the anthem.
I don't know if anybody. Again, I watched the Red Zone channel, so it's not like I had that game on. So I don't know if they showed the vice president leaving or not, but then you see it all over Twitter. Then
I did not. That's what I'm saying.
Everything
and
on social
even
media.
at the game, I'll be honest, I didn't see, leading up. Now, we were all in a suite talking and hanging out, so maybe we weren't paying that much attention to everything going on, but not a distraction at the stadium, I'll say that.
It was actually turned out to be a very entertaining game, which is Colts won at the very end of overtime, for whatever that's worth.
Hey, shout out to Vinny for that. Another kick. How old is he?
44.
54 years old, still making kicks.
Isn't it?
He's hugging me away. He, again, looks like Moses. He's great.
Man.
I'm like, what happened to you, man? And he's still just busting it. Congrats to him, man.
Can you imagine hanging out with the rookies? Thursday night club or something, hanging out with
his son's as old as the rookies. I'm like, what's up? It's awesome.
Adam Vinatieri is who he's talking about. He makes another big, long kick at the end. He's now got the second most field goals of any kicker in NFL history. And there are a variety of other anthem protests involving the anthem related stories out there, including Jerry Jones in the middle of it now, and the Dolphins, who have now made a team rule regarding this. So we are seeing this thing. Teams and the National Football League as a general rule, I think, are seeing where this is becoming a problem for them, and it is being addressed from a variety of different angles.
A couple of weeks ago, we saw supposedly the unity of ownership and players when the owners were down on the field, arm in arm with the players. But now, a couple of weeks later, Jeff, we kind of see maybe that separation of, you know what? Okay, unity or not, there's a rule. We're not disrespecting the flag. You're not kneeling for the anthem. You won't play. So we're starting to see maybe a little bit of a shift.
Yeah, no, and listen, it's business at this point, and and I know,
that's right.
As owners are having to answer these questions and go back and forth with their fan base, and they're not willing to lose the market share or whatever else that looks like. And if there is a rule in place, they're going to enforce it to make sure that
they're private businesses, right? They can make these rules.
They protect their bottom line, and it's you've heard the the rule of how they have to do it. It's going to be interesting to see how they play it out, because you do have to be out there It talks about addressing the helmet being in your left hand.
But it says you should. It doesn't say you
right.
have to.
Yeah,
so
it's all going to get.
So it's up to the team, I think.
Right.
Now, right?
Yeah,
the NBA, of course, does have a rule of that
right.
sort. The NFL players are basically being asked, if you're not going to stand for the anthem, to stay in the locker room or the tunnel until after the playing of the anthem. We'll see. I don't think this thing is going away anytime soon.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Tons of Twitter reaction all morning long. Jeff Saturday in our studio. Let's go on the field. What words would you use to describe what Aaron Rodgers did to the Cowboys yesterday?
Insane. And I will tell you, though, when they scored, and, you hear all the talk between Aikman and Buck and the whole, hey, what should they do? And Dak puts it in. You're just, you're hoping of all hope if you're a Cowboys fan, just get a stop. I'll say this: the third, the touchdown is a great play, great throw, all of that. The third down where he extended it and used his legs to break outside, and you're seeing the play right now. The linebacker who tracks the back out of the backfield, it's two-man coverage, and you got two guys following the running back, and it just opens up that lane. That's when the game has slowed down for a guy. I mean, young quarterbacks probably don't see that quickly. You saw Aaron. It was almost like that was his read. The minute he saw that backer step in, he knew he could break contain, and he just kept hauling. And it's like the game has slowed down so much for him, and he's accomplished so much in his career. He's calm in it, and you saw how fired up he was. I mean, he even gave a little shot on the sideline, you know what I mean, which I thought, whoa, that could go the other way. He gave a little shot. You could tell he was fired up and knew they had a shot to win this thing and not kick a field goal.
He did a great job explaining it to Aaron Andrews after the game, just how you said. He saw exactly what the coverage was and knew if he could shake that tackle that he was going to have room to run. And he said, listen, if I didn't make it, we were going to kick a field goal and tie the game anyway. I love how the touchdown went to Devontae Adams.
Yes.
After the way he got, hit by Danny Trevathan and in that hit against with Green Bay and Chicago. But then the same play twice. Lewis, the young kid, makes a nice play from the Cowboys on the first play. Everybody thinks it's going the other side the next play. They got trips that side. Yeah. I'm waiting for a pick route, crossing route, whatever over there. And the same play, flick of the wrist, right to Adams for the touchdown catch was just fantastic.
It was a thing of beauty. And you hear, you heard Adams afterwards he said, hey, why did Adams say, hey, I told him come back to me. Jordy's out, so he's not even in the game. Mm-hmm. Like you said, you got trips one way. Adams said, hey, I got a matchup. I can beat this kid. Perfect ball, but a nasty catch. Now, don't minimize that catch. I mean, as he's running, Lewis doesn't even turn his head around before he reaches over the top and gets both feet in. As an offensive player, I will tell you, there's nothing more satisfying than that type of drive. When you can see in their eyes, you have the advantage, and I can guarantee you, as they were sitting there, every Cowboys defensive player, they knew, man, this is on edge. We're going to do something special, and instead the Packers make the plays.
You know what, and we've talked a lot about it from the Green Bay side. Let's talk about it from the Dallas side, where we wondered what that division is going to be. Well, don't look now. The Eagles are a really good team.
They are.
Absolutely, they
Wentz
are.
just, lit up, and I think Arizona is not, but Wentz lit them up yesterday. That defense is pretty good. The Eagles are a good team.
Yeah, even without Fletcher Cox right now, they're still producing from a defensive line. Their front seven is very, very good. I'll say this: what I love about Peterson, Frank, right? The whole deal is these guys are running the football. They're not afraid to stay with it and help Wentz. And then you're seeing Aguilar, the plays he's made. I mean, look at him from the last couple of years. The growth this kid has made. He is confident. I mean, he's making guys miss, and he's shaking and baking. He's falling in the end zone. He's doing all those things. You can tell the level of confidence he has in Wentz and what he's doing. This team, like you said, you stick to that type of game plan where you're willing to run it.
I love that. I love their patience to run the ball.
Absolutely.
I love their showing that patience. How about the matchup this Thursday? They against Carolina.
Yes.
I mean, we talk about Thursday. Everybody hates the game. That's a great matchup. Then they get 10 days off or 10 days until they play Washington. It'll be a division game, which they already won that first one at Washington, the opening game of the season. But Thursday's a nice game, but I've been so impressed with their patience because you get a quarterback who's a head coach in Doug Peterson. You're kind of itching to throw that ball.
Yeah, exactly.
Show the patience to be able to hand the ball.
And they did early in the season. They threw it. They threw it too much. I'll tell you, the Panthers game you're talking about. Don't look now. But Cam, McCaffrey, Stewart, these guys are starting to get in a little rhythm, and you see when they can produce a little bit, that defense helps you a ton. It's going to be fun to watch.
Might be the busiest juncture of the sports year that I can remember in an awfully long time. I opened up the show by saying we've got thrilling football finishes. We have 4 baseball games today. We have a lineman looking to fight fans. We have a coach videotaping the last thing in the world you'd think he'd ever want you to see. And we have the vice president taking it up a notch in all this business about the anthem. All that and more is in the hopper. Of them, the only thing we haven't gotten to in these first 2 hours is Donald Penn. So I'm not sure that everyone has seen that video. But after the game, the Raiders are playing badly. They play yesterday without their quarterback. Yep. They're at home. And the fans, as he's leaving, as a lot of the players are driving out of the parking lot, a lot of the fans, I've seen the video, are yelling all sorts of curses at him. He says that someone threw a bottle at his car. That is being disputed in some places. I obviously don't have.
Do not know.
I don't know whether it happened or not, but he does, and it's on video. He does get out of the car and walk over, and confront is sort of a strong word. He says some things, and a security guard is there, and a cop comes over there, and all the rest of that. And the only thing I thought of was the story that you once told me about the time that a fan was berating one of your teammates.
Yeah, no, that was in stadium, though. Right. That wasn't in the parking lot after a game. Quickly, our punt returner was having a tough time. This was at home, too, in Philly. Was having a tough time and made another mistake and was sitting on the stand on the bench. And the first row is probably 20 yards behind the bench, 15 yards. And I was over there telling him, hey, we need you later in the game, just trying to pick him up. And there was some young kid and his girlfriend there, but it was the kid, probably in his 20s, just calling this punt returner everything in the book. I mean, really crossing the line as far as I was concerned. And it's a bad moment for that guy, and it just got the best of me. And I basically looked at the guy and said, shut up, or something along those lines. I'm sure it was a little more spicier than that. And then he kept ripping on the guy and ripping on me, but mostly on the punt returner. So I started walking toward the guy. I literally was, and I was going to get to him. At that point, I was just completely, enraged by the guy. And a cop stepped right in front of me, looked me square in the eye and said, just turn around. I'll take care of it. It's not worth it. And I blinked and was like, yeah, you're right. This would have been a really dumb thing to do. So I turned around and just ignored the guy. But this is in the parking lot after a game. Was a bottle thrown at the car? I mean, that's a completely different circumstance of, you're taught just to let things go. You're really taught as a player. You're not taught. It's just kind of known. Don't let them think they're getting to you or they're going to come at you even harder. That's mostly for away fans. This is a home fan, though, that I was going after. So it's a tough situation. But you know what? You get amped up. You get emotional. These guys just played a bad game. Your own fans are ripping on you. You're supposedly leaving. You're leaving there in a couple of years. I mean, it all kind of adds up to a very emotional situation.
So that was the scene after the game in Oakland. The scene during the game was not so pretty either for the home team. Raiders, we'd heard reports that Derek Carr wanted to play, and then ultimately they didn't let him play, and they didn't get almost anything going there at all.
That's great news, by the way. That's great news that he was out throwing the ball as early as he was. So, right. I mean, that's big for two of the teams I picked to win that division don't have their quarterbacks. I mean, Tennessee with Mariota out, Oakland with Derek Carr out. It's very, very difficult. Yeah.
So, and then in that division, so let's just make a quick run around the league because there's been so much stuff today. Let's try and just do some of the games themselves, Mike. Let me get a quick take from you on each of these.
Yeah.
Kansas City just continues to prove they're not just the only unbeaten team in the sport. They're the best team in football right now, the way they're playing.
Yeah, and again, don't let that score. That was a blowout last night. Deshaun Watson threw 5 touchdowns, but a couple were, one was with 3 minutes ago, the other was when the clock was running out when they were out of it. So between Kareem Hunt and Tyreek Hill with the punt return, I mean, once he gets in the open field, it is over. Travis Kelce could be an issue there. He has a concussion, so we'll see how long that may keep him out. They had the right side of their center was out and the right guard was out last night. They still get the win, but those are things you need to keep an eye on with injuries and just how long they're going to last before you have your guys in there. But and I do believe it. Alex Smith, how much is he getting pushed from the fact that they have basically picked his successor? Just what happened to him in San Francisco is happening to him in Kansas City. They've picked his successor, and now he is playing the best he's played in his career, basically saying, hold on. I got a little bit left in the tank here, gang.
Yeah, and it's a different circumstance because when in San Francisco, when they drafted Colin Kaepernick, they didn't do it in the first round.
Right, it wasn't completely the same. You're right.
That. In this case, they traded up to take Patrick Mahomes in the first round. So that's as loud a statement as
Without
you can make about the future of your franchise. And so there he is playing MVP caliber football. It's him and Aaron Rodgers again. I saw Shefty was tweeting about it, and we were talking about it earlier this morning. They were drafted the same year, and here they go. Mike and Mike presented presented by Progressive Insurance. Creators of the Name Your Price tool. Choose from a range of coverage options. Pick the price that works for you. Another game we haven't done practically anything on this morning is the Steelers. Ben Roethlisberger throwing 5 interceptions yesterday on a day where they appeared to be kind of force-feeding the ball to Antonio Brown.
Oh, yeah.
We saw what happened last week where he turns over the Gatorade thing, and, they were critical of him outwardly, Ben among others, and were they forcing it to him? They targeted him about 406 times yesterday. Several of those were picked. And before your comment, I want you to hear Ryan Clark, because obviously RC was there in Pittsburgh for years and years. He knows that team and the inner workings of it. And he's going to point out a few things that I think are pretty enlightening. Here was Ryan Clark on what's going on right now with the Steelers.
So it's this team in this city that's about work, and it's about hard work, and it's about family, and it's about being quiet and going about your business. It's been extremely noisy in Pittsburgh this year. Like you said, whether it's Le'Veon Bell or Martavius coming back, or why can't we get a running game going early, the anthem, Antonio, now Ben. There's always something going on other than focusing on being the best football team we can possibly be. We come into this season expecting highlight reels every weekend from this offense. The killer bees and all of these different people, this offensive line that they put a lot of money into, but they haven't been focusing on football. Every week, Coach Tomlin's having to give a soliloquy about how we're going to change things, what's going to be different, not about just playing football the Pittsburgh Steelers way.
That's a really great point. I mean, for a blue-collar town and the way we know the Steelers, I mean, the way they play the game, you get Le'Veon Bell, how he was tweeting and stuff before he came back. Antonio Brown, we know. Now with Ben, every year you're going to get the question of whether he's going to continue to play or not, right? I'm going to retire. I'm thinking about retiring. I'm not sure. Have I lost it now after this game? Yeah, it seems a bit dysfunctional in Pittsburgh right now for a team that we keep saying on paper they have so much talent out there. But just a bad game. Ben, one ball was tipped at the line. Another, Antonio Brown did have 10 catches, but 3 going to him also were intercepted. One was high off his hand, and a defender that got picked, and the others were bad throws by Ben. Just bad throws. And Jacksonville, we've talked about this defense. You want to talk about a Jekyll and Hyde team, right? Where they play one like, wow, look at them, and then they'll play really bad, and then they'll play really well. But one thing is for sure, that defense is fantastic. And you go through the sheet of how they built it with free agents and drafts. They put their time and money into it, and it is going to pay off for them. I still believe Blake Bortles won't be the quarterback there next year. They're going to have to look in another direction. Leonard Fournette, I know, capped it for you. He had a good game that turned into a great-looking statistical game with a 90-yard run at the end of the game. But how about in that play when he broke outside and called on the defender to hit him?
Looking for a hit.
He's a load. So that's a team you're like, yeah, okay. But Pittsburgh, I am a little surprised at, I think, Ryan Clark, the word that I was looking at out of him saying is a little bit of dysfunction going on there.
Yeah, I mean, noisy is exactly the right way to describe it. A lot of things. And look, we've talked about the situations involving the national anthem around the NFL all year long, and the discord that it has caused throughout the country. In most places, it did not appear that it was creating disharmony within the teams. Pittsburgh seemed to be the one place that it sort of did.
Yeah.
And you'll never really know. I don't think that we'll ever really know whether that is impacting them or not. But that's deeply personal stuff.
Yes, you're right.
Might be creating a problem. They just don't look right. Like you watch them play, they just don't look right.
I agree. They look out of sorts.
I can't sit here and tell you that's the reason, but that's every other team. I mean, the fans and the president and everyone else has their own perspective on it. But every other team seems to have pretty much handled it within their own house in a way they were comfortable with, at least outwardly.
No, I know what you're saying.
They seem to have had a problem.
They definitely have had a problem. Now, is it affecting the play on the field? That's something we don't know. We're not in that locker room. But to your point, it does seem to have affected them more than others.
All right, and then one more thing quickly, and then we'll get Marcus Spears in here because we haven't gone through any of the college games from the weekend, but they were 2 huge defeats. 2 big-time teams losing games at home to unranked opponents, which were huge. So we'll get Marcus Spears in here in a second. But again, what's trending now, what everyone is talking about is this Chris Foerster. So he's the Miami Dolphins offensive line coach. And I'm just going to give you basically the layman's version of what happened here. This is not a videotape that was taken of him surreptitiously.
No.
He is clearly videotaping himself speaking to a woman in extremely suggestive and at times lewd and vulgar language. while snorting lines of white powder off a table. I'm being instructed not to call it cocaine. It's very difficult to picture that it's anything else, but in the interest of total fairness, he's at minimum snorting white powder off of a table.
Yeah.
The Dolphins say they were taken aback by it and are just finding out what's going on. He has refused comment. It is one of the most startling things we've seen happen within a football team or within the world of sports, and as long as I can remember.
Just stunning. And as Jeff Saturday, who was just here, said, he was an assistant coach on Jeff's team for a little bit as well. He's been with 8 different teams. I think it's his second stint with the Dolphins. So this is just stunning. I mean, stunning again, because he's filming it. He's saying things to try and impress this woman. It blows my mind. And then she posted it. You know, she ended up posting it on her Facebook page. So, listen, I mean, I just when you think you've seen it all, we've been doing this 18 years, and many times we've come in and say, man, haven't seen this before. Can it get any wilder than this? Well, here we go again. I mean, I can't even begin to know where to go with this other than the guy is obviously going to be out of a job. I think there's no question about that. If it is him, in fact, and he is snorting what we think he's snorting, I don't think there's going to be any question about that, but just unreal that he taped himself doing this.
This is something they also can't let linger. I mean, the Dolphins have to find out what's going on with this, and they have to do something about it immediately, because it is certainly going to be what everyone is talking about otherwise. Okay, Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Now we shift gears again. Let's go on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line to our friend Marcus Spears, who does terrific work analyzing college football on the SEC Network. He is the co-host of Thinking Out Loud on the SEC Network that airs Monday nights at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, and he's all over our coverage coming off of what was an interesting weekend with 2 surprising results. Marcus Spears, good morning. How are you today?
Greeny Golic, what's up, brothers? Hey, listen, I'm looking at the show this morning, and I'm saying to myself, they never know what they're going to have to talk about Monday morning, and this is one of those mornings.
It most certainly
is. It really,
if you had told me we were going to have an NFL offensive line coach snorting white powder on videotape and releasing that, essentially putting it out to the world himself by sending it to someone else, I would have told you, no, I'll take the under on that. But one way or another. All right, let's get to it here, because we got huge results this weekend. The Oklahoma defeat, let's start with that. They're a 30-point favorite at home against Iowa State, and they lose. How stunning, to put that in context of how stunning it is and what you think it overall does for them and for the Big 12.
I think it's very stunning. But we had this conversation about Oklahoma and whether this defense was really good enough to be a top 4 team in the country. And I think it came to a head. We got excited about Baker Mayfield and this offense and what they were able to do. But if you look at it, Baylor put up a lot of points on Oklahoma the week before. And now you got Iowa State, who plays tough in the Big 12 all the time, getting this win. So it muddies it up. Oklahoma was the one team left, now maybe TCU, with the hope of the Big 12 getting into the college football playoff. And now when you look at the situation coming into this week, everybody in the Big 12 is on red alert except TCU. And TCU can be beat by Oklahoma. They can be beat by a couple other teams in the Big 12. So you just never – now it's so muddied up that you don't really know who the team is that's going to come out of the Big 12 at the end of the year to give them a chance to be in the playoffs.
TCU, that undefeated team now, November 11th is when they play at Oklahoma. So a lot of people looking at that one. Can another team like in Oklahoma and Oklahoma State get back into this thing? But obviously TCU's going to have to lose. And then Michigan State and Michigan in a game for the second half and into the second half, the torrential downpour that happened. It was one of those, and they called it. You could see that they were showing it before the game. The wall that was moving in, that whoever was leading when that came in was probably going to win, and it turned out to be Michigan State. What does this do for Michigan, who looks like Spate, their starting quarterback, who hasn't played in a bit, is going to be out for the season? So O'Korn is going to be the guy. What do you see with them moving forward?
They got to stop turning the ball over, Green. I mean, Golic. That's what it really boils down to. They have to take care of the football. And I know they talk about the weather. You go back to the first game of the season when Spate was in. They threw 2 interceptions to Florida, the first game of the season, that almost let Florida back into that game and have a chance to win it. So that is really what it's boiling down to for Jim Harbaugh and Michigan, taking care of the football. The defense is good enough to get these guys to where they want to be. at season's end. But if you continue to put these guys in a bad predicament, I'm going to tell you, as a defensive player, when you see it happening and you know that you have a good enough unit to kind of keep your team relevant and keep us in games in every game that we play, and the offense continues to turn the football over and give other teams chances, it begins to get frustrating. So you would hope that within the makeup of Michigan right now, that all of these guys are talking and they're trying to get things fixed from an offensive standpoint. But as it stands, you know, we talk about Harbaugh being 1-4 against rivalry games, and we talk about all of the things that has taken place at Michigan. They play really good football. We got to still think about where this program was before Jim Harbaugh took over. And they still have an opportunity to continue to win and maybe get back in the conversation, because I think the Ohio State game is still looming, and it's still going to be something that everybody's going to have an eye on. Penn State is still there as well. So they have enough strength in that conference to make a run again and for them to have a strong enough statement at the end of the season to get into the top four. But as of right now, they just got to take care of the football, man.
Mike and Marcus Spears, it was pointed out after those two games that each of the three national champions in this era with the college football playoff have lost a game at home during the season. So these two teams lose a game at home. We immediately write them off. And as Marcus is pointing out, they may not end up that way. And did you guys see what Trevor Maddich tweeted after those games? It really made me laugh out loud. We're talking about Oklahoma's struggles on defense and Michigan's struggles on offense. He tweeted, if Oklahoma's defense and Michigan's offense were on the same team, Kent State would schedule them for homecoming. I thought it was
pretty good.
Actually, a pretty good line. All right, Marcus, should we just package up the Heisman Trophy and send it to Saquon Barkley right now, or is that still up for grabs?
It's Saquon's right now. And when you look at what he's doing, look, this is the thing, all right? We know that this is a quarterback award. Whenever that guy establishes himself as the best player, or he has these performances, or does something that raises everybody's eyebrows. Go back to Lamar Jackson last year. There were games where you just said, all right, he plays the right position. That was a dynamic performance. This dude is special. Saquon Barkley is the best player in college football this year. He's proven it. He's affecting the game even when he doesn't have the ball. And you talk about athleticism, you talk about leadership, you talk about the right mentality. All the voters look at now because of the Reggie Bush situation, the Johnny Manziel situation. All of these voters, all of these Heisman voters look at the makeup and the character of these players as well. And I think that's going to help him as far as the season goes along. He's going to continue to perform. Trace McSorley is good enough at quarterback to make sure that Saquon doesn't have all of these boxes, 8, 9-man boxes trying to defend against them. They get him involved in the pass game. So when you look at a complete player, it's Saquon Barkley. When you look at a guy that affects the game more than anybody else in college football right now, it's Saquon Barkley. So I don't see any reason why he wouldn't end up being the Heisman favorite now and winning the trophy if they can continue to have a successful season at Penn State, and not to mention if they continue to win and have a chance to get in the playoffs.
All right, Marcus, we all know Alabama, Clemson. A lot of people think they're going to go undefeated, 1-2 in the country. I've said this already about the SEC title game. Now I'll say it about the ACC title game. Better chance happening. Alabama, Georgia meet in the SEC title game undefeated. Clemson, Miami meet in the ACC title game undefeated.
I think it's a better chance that you – that's a great question, Goldie. I think it's a better chance you get Clemson and Miami undefeated. And when you look at – meeting in the championship game, when you look at the SEC, man, the physical grind, I get concerned about these teams. Week 5, 6, 7, and you going forward, the line of scrimmage, you lose important guys, man. We just had a couple guys get injured this week. Natrez Patrick from Georgia, the linebacker, was suspended for marijuana. All of these type of things happen. So the physical part of it, losing players, who's instrumental to what's going on. We saw Luke Del Rio go out for Florida. They had to play with Felipe Franks. That didn't give them enough offense to beat LSU. Alabama still has to play Auburn, who I think is getting better and better every single week. They're physical at the line of scrimmage. That'll be a great matchup. After seeing what Texas A&M was able to garner, even though Alabama had the game in hand, plays are there to be made. And then when you look on Georgia's side, I think Georgia has the best path to go undefeated, but they have to play Auburn. Auburn is the fly in the ointment for both of the teams in the SEC right now because they continue to get better. They're playing defense at an elite right now, elite status. So if Jarrett Stidham and that offense can continue to progress, that's a real valuable reason why Georgia or Alabama wouldn't be undefeated going to the SEC championship. And if they beat Alabama, obviously, and have the rest of the season like it's trending right now for Auburn, they could end up playing in Atlanta. It'll be interesting come down to the end.
The best of Mike and Mike.
All right, Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Shell Pinzel Performance Line. Always a delight to bring Chris Mortensen into our studio. And we've never needed you more than we need you right now because this is the craziest morning I can remember in the NFL in a long time.
No, I was reading Peter King's Monday Morning Quarterback today, and in his first 3 or 4 fat paragraphs, there's a summation of what you would say is really kind of one of those punch-in-the-gut type weekends. I mean, there were the heights and lows that you have with a normal NFL weekend, but for some reason this weekend was uniquely great, uniquely sad, and uniquely weird.
Let's start with the weird. This story with the Miami Dolphins offensive line coach. Again, his name is Chris Furster. I know that you have tried to reach out and done some of the reporting on this. What have you been able to find out?
Well, just to go through it. I mean, listen, we're like everybody else, we're watching the Chiefs and Texans games, and we're trying to catch up with the injuries to JJ Watt and Whitney Merciless, who's a heck of a player, by the way.
Yes, he is.
And then, Adam Schefter and I, we're in the same hotel, and we're almost like a floor above or floor below each other every Sunday, and we're texting each other or talking to each other as we're going through a list of things that are happening and unfolding. In this case, J.J. Watt's unfolding. But then all of a sudden, this video is posted on Facebook of Chris Furster, who is the Dolphins offensive line coach. So first thing you do is that him? Well, you look at it, and it's like instantly, yes, that is him. But somebody, make sure we get verification somewhere else. But that's him. And you see his goatee is the gray speckled in it, so it feels it's recent. And then trying to immediately reach him, and I'll say I called him. He answered the phone. Hello, it's his voice. And then I identify myself, and he hangs up. So, it tells me his caller ID wasn't working. I didn't put it on no caller ID.
Right.
So I didn't get a comment, but he hung up, and then there has been verification as him. The Dolphins have issued their statement that they're looking into it. And in cases like this, you don't expect the guy to be on the field again with them this year. Will he be fired? Listen, if he has a problem, a substance abuse problem, he's treated like any other employee,
right?
Which is, you need to go get help before we even talk about the work. And so, in summation of a weird event that happened close to between 11 and midnight Eastern time last night, that was the weird part of it.
So I mean, from the fired standpoint, I get it. If a player walks in and said, "I need help," before they test positive, they can be protected a bit.
Right.
If this video is out, could the Dolphins fire him and say, "Listen, you say you want help, we'll help you, but this video, we had no idea you needed help." So, do you expect him to have the job with the Dolphins?
I would say that. Actually, I don't know the specific rules and guidelines. They have contracts too, by the way. But I would suspect that they certainly have the right to dismiss him, for a cause. But then the whole process of you're an employee, you want to help the guy, and my gut instinct, you would hope, is that yes, we want to help the guy, but doesn't mean you get to come back and coach with this football team anymore, and certainly not this year as we see it. We'll wait to hear it unfolds today. They'll have a statement, I'm sure, and maybe even Chris will have a statement.
All right, so that's the weird part of it. The sad part of it, which is the much more commonplace part, unfortunately, in the NFL, is several really high-profile players suffering bad injuries. Let's start with Odell Beckham. We know he's done for the year. The questions then become about his long-term future. We know the situation is in contractually. We know how ridiculously talented and productive he has been. What is it, at this point, we may just be guessing, but what is your expectation of where it all goes for him and for the Giants now contractually?
Well, I think he is going to be a Giant, whether it's going to be under a different circumstance than certainly he envisioned, which is I'm going to get a contract that makes me the highest paid player in football, but we also know that means the highest paid non-quarterback in football. And he was going to get that, despite irritating, ownership with the dog thing in the first week. Or whenever it was. He's going to be with the Giants. I think there's going to be some hesitation about giving him that huge contract. However, if you think he's going to heal properly and still be the player he is, then I would think that the big contract is still possible, but less of a lock than it was going into that week. And by the way, just to speak on the bigger injuries, and you played this, sometimes we don't appreciate what these guys put themselves out there for, and fans will say, well, they get paid a lot of money and all that stuff. But, they're humans and their families, and people are emotionally connected. But I've always said, and in the case of JJ Watt, which we'll get to, he says this morning on Twitter, I am devastated, which tells you pretty much the big picture.
Yep.
It's bad for the player, it's bad for the team, but it's bad for the NFL. We just lost two of the faces of the league, and J.J. Watt and Odell Beckham Jr. That's bad for the league.
And again, overall, for a Houston defense, Whitney Merciless goes out with a pectoral muscle tear. Between he and Watt since 2012 have 109 sacks, most of any duo on any team. Yeah. With Watt, is there going to be major concern that he may never be the player he is again, coming off the couple of surgeries on the back, and now from I agree with your statement of what that says about this injury right now that may keep him out the rest of the year?
Yeah, I guess it could. He's always one of those guys you say, well, if anybody can, J.J. Watt can. But, listen, your back surgery, some people will even suggest that as good as he was playing, he still hadn't reached that Defensive Player of the Year plateau. Right. I mean, status that he had. But, those things normally take time. We're only in the first, at the end of the first month of the season, basically. So, who knows? But he's certainly going to be a Texan. There's no question about it. And, recover.
Money's not the issue.
But this is a team that we said, especially now with the emergence of Deshaun Watson, that really should contend. I know they lost to the Chiefs, but the Chiefs are the best team in football right now, and that to me is like that's another part of this deal. Is we're losing a couple of great players off one of the best teams in the league.
That whole division is kind of hard to figure.
Really
Tennessee,
is.
obviously, without Mariota right now. Jacksonville, there have been several weeks this season where they look like the best team in the sport, and then against the Jets, they looked like anything but, and they lost another bad game to the Titans as well.
We now don't know what the Jets are, which is
what?
A premium team.
What are they? What are they?
Hey, it's just tanking. It just goes to prove, by the way, this tanking concept is to the guys in the locker room, to the coaches, the guys who put in all the time to work. There is no such thing as tanking. But here's the thing about Jacksonville. This is the imprint and stamp and the culture that they wanted to create, not just with Tom Coughlin, who's now the vice president of football operations, but with Doug Marrone, who is just like joined at the hip there in terms of that philosophy. And that's what you see, along with the talent that has been put together by Dave Caldwell, who's the general manager. So it's a collaborative effort, but you can't go with Blake Bortles not winning the game for you, although he's won one, we've seen. But they're a pretty good football team.
But by the time they get to be whatever it is they want to be, and they're a good team.
Blake Bortles won't be.
He won't be. That's what I'm asking you.
No. In my opinion.
Well, let me ask you this real quick, because I've stated this with the emergence of Deshaun Watson, and I think it's real. He won't have perfect games every week, but a lot of teams passed on Deshaun Watson before, including Cleveland traded out 12. We've talked about that. But Jacksonville was a team at 4 with questions about Bortles, but they wanted to create this physicality, and I can tell you Watson was a serious consideration for them at 4. They went with Leonard Fournette, and it looks great right now for what they're trying to create there. But, you just wonder if 3 years down the line we'll be second-guessing them too. But there's a lot of other teams to second-guess if Watson continues along this path.
Yeah, I mean, the Browns at this point have bypassed in the last 2 years Jared Goff and Carson Wentz
not
Deshaun
Goff,
Watson.
Because the Rams had flipped into the one spot.
Okay.
Right.
So I guess they wouldn't have been able
to. But they did pass on Wentz.
Okay.
And that was like 50. The league was split 50-50. Who was going to be the better
Fair
one.
enough. Wentz or Goff, and based upon the time that they did it.
That's right.
And then now on Deshaun Watson and others. So we'll see what one. And yesterday they benched Deshaun Kaiser at halftime.
Yes, they did.